Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So if you're new here, my name is Andrea and I'm a music photographer based in London and I do videos mostly about that. So for this video, I thought that I would have a little chat with you guys about the differences between shooting a live concert versus shooting at a studio. So a studio photo shoot. At first glance, you might think there aren't that many differences between the two, but let me tell you, there are quite a few. And these are things that I learned as I worked as a music photographer. These are things that maybe I didn't know when I first started off, so I thought that maybe it might be interesting for some of you if you're starting out and didn't think about these things this way. So before I get into this video, please make sure that you do the YouTubey things, that you like the video if you liked it, that you can dislike it if you dislike it, subscribe and comment and all of that. It just really helps the channel grow and reach other people, so don't forget to do that if you enjoyed the video. And yeah, one of the biggest differences that come to my mind regarding shooting at a concert versus at a studio is that at a studio you're most likely going to be in charge of the composition of the shots. So you're gonna be the one who asks the band to be a certain way, ask them to stand in a certain way, pose in a certain way. You're gonna be the one who's gonna dictate the angles of the shots. You know, you have way more freedom with where you stand and how you're gonna take the shot. You know, you can get on top of a chair, you can get a tripod, you can get a backdrop. You're way more in charge of the people that you're shooting, as opposed to when you're shooting at a concert, you are more of a spectator, you're more of an observer, so it's more of a sort of like documentary photography situation as opposed to a more intentional sort of photography where you play a huge role in how that final image is going to look like. Because when you're shooting someone at a concert, I feel like they do most of the, movement themselves. They do most of the posing, the placement, everything. So that's the main difference. Along those lines, another big difference is that you don't have any control over the settings of, obviously when you are shooting at a studio, you get to say if you want any props in the studio, if you want a backdrop. You might even suggest some sort of wardrobe if you have a stylist, or even if you don't have a stylist, you might send them some suggestions of what you think would photograph well, so you have a bit of an influence on the fashion of the shoot, as opposed to at a concert, they wear whatever they want, so that's a difference. But as I was saying, you have all the control of the set. When you shoot at a studio, you have all the control over the lighting. You can have exterior lights like the umbrella lights, all the different sort of lights, as opposed to when you're shooting at a concert, you're not even supposed to use flash, and if you are allowed to use flash, that's pretty much all that you have, and you have to kind of work against the lights on stage. So lighting is a huge challenge when you're shooting at a concert. And when you're shooting at a studio, you are in charge of the lights, so you have the light to work to your advantage, as opposed to at a concert where you have to work almost against it to make it work. Because a lot of the times there's a lot of backlight happening, there's a lot of lens flare, there's a lot of harsh colors and stuff, and these are all things that you can control and avoid in a studio setting. This is gonna sound like a pro studio video, but don't get me wrong, I love shooting concerts, and I'm gonna also touch on differences that make shooting concerts better than shooting at studios as well. So keep tuned. Actually, I'm just gonna say it now before I forget. One of the best things about shooting concerts versus shooting at studios is, depending on your style as a photographer, me personally, I'm not a big fan of having to set a scene up because I have so much to think about when I'm at a shoot. I have the lighting to think about, the lenses, the equipment, the positioning, everything. And sometimes it's a bit of a relief to lend some of that creative direction, that creative freedom to the subject. And that happens a lot at concerts because they are the ones who are making the poses and stuff, as opposed to at a studio where you have to direct them. And sometimes shooting a concert can alleviate that pressure of setting a scene up, because you just have to sort of react to it and make it work, as opposed to create it. So that's one of the biggest pros, I think, of shooting concerts for me personally. Here's another point that can be seen as a positive or as a negative, depending on who you ask. For me, it can be both as well, and it is the time constraint that you have when you shoot at concerts versus studios, because at concerts there's a very set time limit of when you can get your shot done. A lot of the times, like I mentioned in a lot of my previous videos, there's the famous 3-song rule where you're only allowed to shoot for the first 3 songs of a concert. So you can imagine that gives you maybe 9 to 12 minutes, maybe 15 minutes to get the shot before you're asked to leave or you're kicked out, or whatever. Not all concerts, not all artists impose that rule. Sometimes you can stay for the whole duration of the concert, but a lot of the times you can't. And with the studio, you can stay for as long as you want, or as long as you paid for. A shoot at a studio usually ranges from, an hour to like 3 hours, or like, 10 hours if you're doing like a very extensive shoot with a lot of different looks. For me personally, I shoot between 1 to 2 hours at a studio because that's just what works for me and the people that I work with. So a lot of the times you have a lot more time to practice, to trial and error, get a little bit creative, because a lot of the times by the time you reach the end of a shoot at a studio, your pictures are going to look so different to what they looked like at the beginning, because you try so many different things, you saw what worked and you went with that and you explored that and you developed that, as opposed to when you're shooting at a concert. Not to say that that can't happen, but I feel like there's a much more limited time where that could happen. And I feel like usually these developments and changes that can happen within a shoot need a little bit more time to experiment, and you don't really get that with concerts. So there's a definite difference in time constraints and pressure between those two situations. And with that said, for me, sometimes having that pressure is good. It gives me a bit of adrenaline. It gets me excited. It makes me work really hard. My brain just goes into survival mode almost. Not to sound too dramatic, but I just get so focused. You can really make a lot happen in a short period of time, especially if you experience and you practice and stuff like that. So it's definitely like a different way of working, but it works if you work well under pressure. So this next point might be something that you don't even really think about when you're comparing concert versus studio photography. But I feel like this is also a bit of a considerable difference. And again, it can vary from case to case, but I think this is sort of what usually happens, what's usually the norm. When you're shooting a concert, a lot of the times I feel like the turnaround time that you have for your pictures, I don't know if that's the term for it, it's like the time that you have between when you take a photo and when you have to deliver it, that turnaround time is usually, I feel like, way shorter than for studio photography. Concert photography can depend a little bit on that quick turnaround of images to remain relevant, because a lot of the times people will feel the most connected with that image, a day or two after that image was taken at that concert, whether it be by the people that attended the concert and then they see it on that artist's social media, or for the artists themselves to post about it. Sometimes there's a lot more relevancy when it's done quite quickly after the photo was taken. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm explaining this in such a roundabout way because I can't think of the actual term for it. Let me know if you understand what I mean. Studio shots usually have a longer downtime between when you take the photos and when you get to deliver them. These shoots a lot of the time are planned way in advance, because they might be for press or for an album cover or for some sort of promotional feature, and most of the time I feel like you have more time to edit them and work with them and develop them, and they are not necessarily time sensitive. I think, is that the term that I was looking for? Time sensitive? Yeah. So concert photography, I think, is a lot more time sensitive than studio photography. Yeah. Does that make sense? Can you tell that I don't have a script for this video? I feel like scripts sometimes make me more nervous because I keep reading over my notes and making sure that I get everything, and sometimes I can't speak as naturally, so I don't know. But hopefully you can still get some useful information out of these mushed thoughts. So yeah. This might be a controversial one, maybe not, I don't know. But I feel like a lot of the times studio shoots are often, more than not, better paid gigs or better paid jobs than shooting at concerts. At least that's been my experience most of the time, because the product from a studio shoot is a lot of the times more valuable than a live shot at a concert, because a shot from a studio, like I mentioned before, can be used in a way more versatile way. It can be used, a lot of the times for promotion, for press, for album covers, for posters, and it just has a longer lifespan a lot of the times, and it's used as a marketing tool a lot of the time, so it usually generates the artist more money, I guess. So it's a project that they are more able or willing to pay more for because it's something that will also yield them more income. Is that too crude to say? How can I explain in a better way? I guess it's more valuable monetarily. One photo shoot at a studio can yield images for a variety of different projects for that artist, especially if you do different looks and different sets. You can really expand the lifespan of those images and it can be more useful for them. So I guess they are more willing to pay. Record labels and the artists themselves are more willing or just naturally have a bigger budget for those sort of projects. So yeah. Another major difference, and again, can vary from case to case, but when you are shooting with an artist at a studio, you can communicate with them a little bit better. You can sort of come up with a final image that's a bit more of a product of both of your ideas. What I mean by that is a lot of the times when you shoot at a studio, before you even get there, you will have discussed a bit of a mood board, what they want in a shoot, and you will kind of work together to sort of collaborate to bring a final image to life. As opposed to when you shoot at a concert, a lot of the times, although it is a collaborative effort in the sense that the artist is presenting themselves in their own way and posing, and that's obviously a huge part of the photo. But I feel like photography-wise, I feel like you have a way bigger influence in the final image of a concert photo. And when you shoot at a studio, a lot of the times, the artist has more influence on that final image because it's a more collaborative effort, because you're there together, you take a photo, you communicate, you can sometimes even show them the photo, see what we would like to do differently, and we go from there. As opposed to at a concert, you're just shooting on your own, you don't communicate, you don't exchange ideas, and that photo usually leans a little bit more towards the photographer's style as opposed to the style that the artist would want or like. No, that's not what I mean. Basically what I mean is that naturally, because you're not communicating with your subject when you're shooting a live concert, they won't have such a big influence on the final image as opposed to when you shoot at a studio. Because it's a more collaborative effort, they will have a bigger say in how that image turns out in the end. So sometimes it's a bit of a blend of both your styles and wants in that case. Does that make sense? I feel like every 5 minutes I'm just questioning if what I'm saying is understandable. Let me know if you understand what I mean and what you think about what I just said. If you're also a photographer, please let me know what you think are the major differences between shooting at a live setting, whether that be photojournalism or live concerts or street photography, any of that, as opposed to shooting at a studio. Let me know what you've experienced. Let me know what you thought of this video, what you would like to see next. And don't forget to subscribe and like. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye-bye.